The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
For 6 months, candidates for Cincinnati City Council have appeared at dozens of community meetings across the city, explaining their positions and trying to distinguish themselves in a field of 21 people. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. In the midst of a heated mayoral race that is vacuuming up dollars and attention, 21 men and women are running for one of 9 seats on Cincinnati City Council. 13 are non-incumbents. 3 of those are former members of council, while 7 have never run for public office in the past. In a big field races like this, I only invite non-incumbents on to Newsmakers. 4 have appeared on earlier shows. This morning, 4 more. I am joined this morning by Kevin Flynn, who is a charterite, who is making a 3rd run for council. Mr. Flynn is a real estate attorney, a member of the board and former chair of the charter committee. He is also a former chair of the board of Drake Hospital. Greg Landsman is a Democrat, also endorsed by the charter. You're going to see a pattern here, who is making his 1st run. Currently, Greg is executive director of Strive Partnership, an education consortium working to improve results in the Cincinnati, Covington, and Newport school districts. Mr. Landsman served in the state administration of Governor Strickland as director of the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives. Amy Murray is a Republican co-endorsed by the Charterites. Ms. Murray was appointed to a seat on council in January 2011. She did not win her seat that November. Ms. Murray worked for 18 years for Procter & Gamble and now runs a consulting business focused on helping companies to fully develop their Japanese businesses. David Mann is a Democrat, also co-endorsed by Charter. Served on Cincinnati Council for 18 years, including 3 years as mayor. He then served 1 term in the United States Congress. Mr. Mann is an attorney practicing with his son. Welcome to Newsmakers, all of you. And just so viewers understand, I wasn't fully aware that all of you were co-endorsed by Charter, so anyway, that's why there's a little humor going on here. Kevin, yes. Let's begin with you. One of the things that you and actually others have talked about in this campaign is the need to structurally balance the budget, okay, not just find ways to plug holes. Question is, would you consider cuts in police and fire departments as legitimate questions to ask, as the city manager has proposed going into the past budget cycles, or are those kind of cuts in the safety services off the table before you even look at the budget?
You have to question everything, Dan, but we don't need to cut our first-line defenders of public safety, because public safety has to be our #1 priority. If people aren't safe, if people don't have the perception of safety, then none of the rest of the stuff that the city does is going to matter, because people are not going to move into the city and jobs are not going to come into the city. But we don't need to do that. What we need to do is take a systematic approach at the entire $1.5 billion with a B annual budget. We only look at the general operating budget every year, and we only look at it 1 month before we have to pass the budget. That's crisis management, and that's no way to do things.
Okay, let's go on. Greg, how do you feel about this?
It's very similar. I mean, we have to get to a structurally balanced budget. There's no question. We haven't had one in 12 years, so this has to be a huge priority for the next mayor and council and administration. And I do believe that you have to start with a comprehensive savings audit that includes every single department, so that you can determine what, in fact, you can save right off the bat. The process has to be longer. As Kevin said, the way we put together the budget now is a total mess. And, you know, if I thought we, needed to make those cuts, I would say so, but I don't. I mean, Kevin's right. The fact is that we are understaffed at the moment in terms of the number of police on the street, on patrol. And you know, when it comes to our fire department and I think it's a general commitment to ending these brownouts so that people do feel safe, and safety is a priority. But we can get to a structurally balanced budget that includes a comprehensive savings audit of all departments without undermining our ability to keep people safe. Okay.
Let's go over to this side, and let me just adjust this a little bit so we don't all say exactly the same thing. First off, ask Amy first, are you generally in agreement with that? And if so, do you think there's any way to reform inside those two safety departments to be more efficient and effective from a budget point of view?
Sure. Well, first, we've gone down in numbers in both of those departments dramatically in the last 5 years through attrition. So we've lost a lot of police and fire through retirements. So it's not like the departments have stayed stagnant. And we have not had any recruit classes in police in 5 years. I mean, so they are taking personnel cuts. So I think it's important to point that out. And I think with the new police chief and, you know, Chief Braun is still fairly new in the fire department, I think absolutely that they need to be looking at the departments and saying where can they be more efficient, because there are some efficiencies in administration, in how it's run. So I think we need to look and improve that, because the budget is in such a bad situation right now. We have to make changes. Okay, David?
Of course, there are always opportunities for more efficiencies. Chief Craig, before he left, I think brought in a lot. You have fewer people at administrative levels, more people on the streets, more people away from desks. That's a good thing. But the numbers are down, and there's a reality of how many officers you need on the streets, how many firefighters you need to avoid brownouts. Brownouts are very real reality, something that we should not feel comfortable with. If my house is on fire, I don't want the delay in response to be because of a brownout. If I'm having my heart attack, I don't want the delay to be because of a brownout. Those things have to be addressed. Okay.
Let me flip it around, and not everybody has to respond, but anybody who feels compelled to. Where are we on the question of human services funding? Okay, if we're not going to, you know, if police and fire sort of probably fairly protected here, everybody left open possibilities, but yeah. Where are we on where the city ought to be on human services funding? Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that one. I mean, look, it's a small percentage at the moment.
Very small.
You know, 0.04% in terms of the overall budget. I do think the city has a role to play in making sure that families have the stability they need to be successful, and we do that in partnership with the private sector. So I don't think we ought to look at it just in terms of what the city is putting into the system, but what we can leverage also in terms of private investment and what we know works to improve outcomes for families who are struggling. And so one of the ways I think you get to a structurally balanced budget is to pursue what other cities have done, which is to put together 5 to 10 year operating and capital budgets, so you have some serious planning. And in that instance, I think you have to make you know, getting the human service budget up to 1%, which is the goal, if in fact that's going to change outcomes, a major priority. And so yeah, I think that's what we got to do.
You know, several people have mentioned this question about how we do the budgeting and when we do the budgeting. Amy, when you were on council, you were big at wanting to move when the budgeting occurred. I kind of laughed. Yes. Because I didn't think anybody wanted to do that before an election. But now there's 4-year terms. We have moved it. So are we better than we used to be?
Well, it's the first time we've been through. So what happened is we used to do our budget January through December. And when I joined council, I said, this makes no sense, because we have people that are sworn in December 1st making decisions on the budget and making these important decisions without the background and information to really make them effectively. The state's fiscal calendar is July through June. So I suggested at that time and put forward a motion saying we need to change this. And also every December we were threatening to, I wasn't, but people were threatening to lay off police and fire. And I thought that's not good as an employer. Every December, all these families are thinking, am I not going to have a job? And so that's when we put the motion forward, and this is the first year that it's happened. And so I think, you know, we had council members that had been on longer that hopefully have the ability to make better decisions. Of course, there's still the threatening of laying off police and fire, and then the money was found. But I'm hoping that this will be a better system, because if you keep having the same process, you're going to have the same results. And I think making our budget decisions December 24th is not a good idea.
I really agree.
Any change in that?
Well, I hope the change works. I want to go back to your human services question. I was on council when the 1% policy was set, and I find it very unfortunate that because of pressures, we've had to reduce to the level that we are. That needs to be restored if at all possible. One of the tragedies of the last 8 months of the budget process is that the very real budget problems have been masked by the way it played out. We're told in January the only way to avoid police and fire layoffs is to approve the parking deal. Well, it turned out that wasn't true, but that doesn't mean we don't have a serious budget problem. And at some point, if you look at how many non-service, non-fire and police employees have been reduced, we have a far smaller capacity than we used to, and we can't have a community that someday is just police and fire. Nobody wants that. What are we going to do? Police and fire and one person to take care of the trash. My sense and my idea of a vibrant community is much broader than that. So at some point, we're going to have a conversation about what kind of community you want, what kind of services are vital and essential to achieve that goal.
Okay, I want to move on to a little bit different area. I'll start with Greg simply because it seems on your website this is a big thing for you. You talk about job development.
Yeah.
What's the role of the city? I mean, everybody agrees economic development and whatever is a good thing and blah, blah, blah.
Creating jobs.
But what is the role of city government in this, particularly in light of the fact that we just went through the decision about the pure romance where we, you know, it was pouring money in to keep it from going to Covington.
Yeah.
Already leaving Loveland. So how, but always going to stay in the area. How does this, what does economic development mean, and how does that one fit in?
So I think there are three things that the city should do, and just let me premise it by saying that I think you have to start questioning, you have to be able to reimagine what government can do. If jobs and job creation isn't a priority, then you figure out a way to be relevant in that regard, and I think there are three ways to do it. One is I'm a huge proponent of local hire. We have to make sure that for the publicly funded projects that we're doing, that a high percentage of people from our neighborhoods are accessing those jobs and doing it in a way that provides career training so that they can stay employed long after those jobs are done. Number two is we have got to get better organized as a community with the chamber and others to ensure that everyone has a hand on one of our businesses, to make sure that they're happy, their needs are being met, that they can expand if they want to expand, and that we are talking to their suppliers to bring them into the city. We have to get better organized. And then three, I do think you have to be very intentional about your economic incentives and determine whether whether or not all of the deals that you have made or could make are actually going to lead to real jobs.
Okay. One of the things that Greg just brought up was hiring local and doing training, which relates to the effort around the MSD contract and putting in the apprenticeship program. So, Kevin, economic development, job creation, should the city stick to insisting on apprenticeship programs in that sort of massive public spending?
No.
Okay.
Because, and I'll tell you why. These contracts are going to be let in the next couple of years. The way the ordinance is written, the companies that are going to be able to bid on those contracts are already locked in, because you have to have had the apprentice program in place for 5 years. You've cut out a significant amount of minority-owned businesses, a significant amount of small businesses located in the greater Cincinnati area.
So you would,
from even bidding.
So you would favor,
projects,
rather than the apprenticeship approach, more of a cross-in approach where you're packaging these deals so that small businesses can bid?
I think that that's a suggestion that, you know, people put together so that they can compete. But more importantly than that, this is beyond just the MSD program. This is every contract that the city is going to let for over $400,000 from here on out. That's a huge amount of contracting over the course of the next decade.
Okay.
And it's discriminatory.
Let me get the other side of the, not the other side.
Just so you know, they have dropped the apprenticeship
I know they
requirement.
dropped it, but it was there.
Yeah.
So on job developments in general, but this whole question of apprenticeship, packaging, whatever.
So I think with job development, one thing that the city needs to do is you need to be a city that businesses want to come to and stay to. We've increased the property tax, or the council has a couple times in the past few years. That's not business friendly. I keep hearing that certain council members want to increase the earnings tax up to 2.5 or 2.9 to cover our deficits. That's not going to help attract businesses or keep businesses here. So for me, I'm really focused on what can we do to have businesses, small, medium, and large, come to the city and stay in the city. And I think if we increase our earnings tax, and I believe only 9% of cities in the nation have an earnings tax, we're going to take ourselves out of that marketplace, and it's going to hurt everyone, because we need that earnings tax revenue to be able to provide the programs, provide the human services needs.
Different approach. David?
When we spend massive amounts of public dollars on public projects, those dollars ought to benefit to the extent possible, to the extent consistent with the goals of the project. It ought to result in jobs for local residents. It ought to result in jobs particularly for local residents who are in disadvantaged, historically victims of discrimination. I will not back away from that goal. Now, with respect to MSD, the responsible bidder provisions have to be amended, because the county is in the driver's seat. It has to be something that is an agreement between the two. That has to happen. And so we reach agreement with the county, but we have to have those goals firmly a part of whatever the agreement is.
Okay.
I agree with that.
We have to take a short break here. Welcome back. This morning I'm joined by 4 candidates for Cincinnati City Council. On my left are David Mann and Amy Murray. They are joined by Kevin Flynn and Greg Landsman. Okay, Amy, let's go to you.
Yes.
Start this with you. Last week we spent the whole show on issue 4, the pension change, quote unquote, reform. First off, I'm going to like for each of you just to succinctly say yes or no, are you for or against issue 4, a yes or no, and then if not, what's the alternative?
Okay. No, I'm not for issue 4.
Okay. We don't need to spend any more time on that.
Okay.
So, but we still have a real issue here on pensions. So if you're elected, what can we do?
So I think there's a couple things we can do. I think when the pension folks were first thinking of putting this on the ballot, they came and asked me about it and said, would you take a leadership role? And I said, I think this is really premature to put it on the ballot. I think what you need to do is elect 9 city council members that will make a change, that will make impact. When I was on council in 2011, it was one of the first times in recent history that we've done a change with pension. And we made changes very small, but we could only make the small changes in getting 5 votes. We weren't able to make larger changes. But I am willing to work with the pension board. I don't know all the answers, but we have to fix it. And I was one of the people willing in 2011 to say, let's look at it, let's look at the experts on this, and we need to move it forward. Might be adjusting the COLA.
Okay. Okay, adjusting the COLA. David, yes or no?
No, for sure. It's a terrible attempted solution. It'll do great harm to the city, to the budget, to the retirees. I know you
spent a half hour last week.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what's the alternative if you're elected?
You know, we're going to have to come up with a solution, and I'm not bright enough to know what it is. We have to bring some folks together that are conversant with pension plans. I suspect that the solution will require a shared haircut, retirees, current city employees, and the taxpayers. And in the process, we ought to make sure that we don't allow this ever to happen again. That'll be part of the fix. Yeah, and one of the questions is, and maybe this was part of what was dealt with last week, you know, folks with plain old 401ks who left them alone have recovered a lot of their losses from 2008. Why didn't that happen with the city pension fund? Maybe we got the wrong people managing the money.
That didn't get covered, but that is a good question. Kevin?
No.
No okay, no on the issue 4.
No on issue 4. And there's a couple things. I talked about this in 2009, and nobody wanted to talk about it then because it was boring. I spoke with Tim Reardon, who used to be the city's finance director, and he showed how if we had a simple 2.75% COLA instead of a compounded 3% COLA, how we would save tens of millions of dollars over the next decade. One of the reasons that we haven't recovered, that it was $800 million in 2008 after the stock market crashed, and it's $880 million now, there's a couple reasons. One is our health benefits are still way out of whack with what the private sector does relative to health benefits. And the second reason is they had an unrealistic expectation of growth. They had a annual expected growth rate in their pension fund of something like 10 to 12%. They brought it down to 7.5% now, which still may be a little aggressive, but by doing that, it increased the deficit. So we have to get it fully funded, because that's the only way you can make a constructive change to perhaps go to a hybrid plan.
So we're all against issue 4. I'm also against issue 4. For me, the question is, though, how do you get to a better, well-funded system? And so, you know, for one, we have to have a third-party monitor of the fund. We haven't had that. Other cities do it, and it makes a huge difference. 2, other cities are looking at life insurance, buying life insurance as a way to invigorate the fund with new resources. That's got to be on the table. Number 3 is the cost of living adjustment and making sure that we do it right. That will, you know, potentially reduce the unfunded liability by $200–300 million. And 4, we got to take double dipping and put it on the table and say, you know, do we want to keep doing this? And I think the answer is no. However, to get to a place where we actually vote on something and there's meaningful change, I have suggested that we impanel a group of experts, retirees, employees, the folks who are most affected, financial experts, and put them in a room and give them 120 days, and their recommendations are binding. We have to vote on them up or down.
You have to vote on it, not binding in the sense that
no, you just have to vote on it up or down. If we vote on them down, then they go back, they get another 120 days, but we don't stop until we get it fixed.
Okay, this is going to be the last question because I'm just about out of time, but it's my favorite hobby horse. So, David, let's start with you. Government collaboration across, we live in a very fragmented region, and Greg has said on his website that he thought the model for moving forward was the way we're working together on the bridge, although Louisville's building 2 bridges and we haven't figured out one yet. So what is is there any room here for real improvement on government collaboration?
I hope so. I mean, obviously, Hamilton County has suffered for a long time because of all the different political jurisdictions that we have. There's been a historical continuing tension between the city and the county, and sometimes you say to yourself, do the county commissioners understand that a good part of the city is in the county? And I'm hopeful that with a new mayor and new council, we can get back to the shared services study. We can create a different kind of collaboration between the city and county. Greg Hartman and Todd Portune, different parties, they get along fairly well. They disagree on certain things, but at least they have adult conversations about managing the county. Hopefully the city and county can do that too.
Yeah, and both of those two are very interested in this issue. Yeah. Amy, real quick. I'm less than 2 minutes.
No, I'm very interested in this issue. I think we must move forward with shared services. Indianapolis gives us a great model of a municipal government. You know, the city's having issues, the county's having...
Don't say that out loud too often.
Well, I know, but in the but the county's also having financial issues. So we have to work together. We have to make baby steps and see where can we combine services so that it will help both groups. And I know the county commissioners are willing to do that, and I think the city must step forward. This is part of the way that we can solve our budget issues, and we need to use it.
Kevin.
Yes, absolutely. Not only just between the city and the county internally could be sharing services. We could be doing central purchasing. We could be sharing some of the capital that we have, the trucks that we have in different departments that aren't being used to their full extent. So we can do it internally, we can do it with the county, and every other little municipality is also hurting. We need to share with them as well.
Okay, I want Greg, last word since I quoted you.
Yeah, no, this is a big issue for me. I mean, I don't think you're going to get to a structurally balanced budget until you get serious about shared services. So for me, no more studies, no more task forces. Let's just get going. And I would, you know, get 5 or 6 votes. 5 or 6 votes to say to the city manager, look, every 60 to 90 days, bring to us a shared service agreement with any municipality, a school district, a township, a village, county itself. It doesn't matter. We're going to vote on on it. We're going to get it going. It'll be in the news every 60 to 90 days, and we don't stop until we get the real savings that will make a huge difference.
Okay, I'm out of time, unfortunately, but thank you very much, and it's great to have 4 people who bring fresh ideas, so we'll see. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. This program and all of our election programs since Labor Day can be seen at local12.com. In addition, we have streamed an interview with Pamela Thomas, the appointed incumbent, online as part of this show. Next week, we end with the preparation for elections with a Newsmakers interview with John Cranley and Roxanne Qualls, the candidates for the mayor of Cincinnati. Have a good week, and we'll see you next Sunday.